Hello, everyone. My name is Shawnte Loeri. On behalf of the Partnership for Food Safety Education, I'd like to welcome you to the webinar, Breaking Through Food Safety Barriers and Myths. We have an exciting lineup today. Dr. Jennifer Quinlan with Drexel University will discuss research on consumer poultry handling. Next, Adrian Aguirre with New Mexico State University will share the new campaign called Don't Wash Your Chicken. Then Melissa Wyatt and I will share some new resources to help you with your food safety outreach. So we have a few housekeeping matters to share. First, please feel free to join the chat and submit questions in the Q&A box. At the end of the webinar, a short survey will pop up. Please take the survey to help us better serve your needs. And many of you are probably wondering about CEUs. We will upload the CEU certificates in the chat box for you to download today. You'll also receive the CEUs in a follow-up email from us. And tomorrow, you'll be able to download them from our website, fightback.org. Those of you seeking NCHEC credits will need to complete a questionnaire by October 11th. All right, let's get started. About the partnership, we are a nonprofit organization that includes 13,000 health and food safety educators, over 40 partner organizations, and federal liaisons. We all work together to provide science-based food safety messages. The work that we do is very important because each year, 48 million people in the United States get sick from food poisoning. And sadly, 3,000 people die from contaminated food. Our mission is to create education programs to help reduce the foodborne illness risk for consumers. So before our first speaker, let's take a quick poll. In recent research, consumers were asked, why do they still wash their chicken? So which of these answers do you think is the most popular reason that consumers gave us? We'll give a few seconds to see what the audience thinks. Okay, we're going to give you about 5 more seconds, and then we can end the poll. Okay, the majority of people said that the chicken has dirt or goo that must be washed off, and that is one of the answers. But the most popular reason that consumers gave was number 3, that it's fine to wash my chicken because I'm going to rinse off my counter and wash my sink. So that's interesting to know. So our first guest speaker is Dr. Jennifer Quinlan. Dr. Quinlan is a professor in the Nutrition Sciences Department at Drexel University. Her areas of expertise include food safety risk for low-income and minority populations, older adults, and consumer food safety education. Dr. Quinlan has served on the USDA's National Advisory Committee for microbiological criteria for foods. She currently serves on the editorial boards of Food Protection Trends and the Journal of Food Protection. And she serves on the board of directors for the Partnership for Food Safety Education. Thank you, Dr. Quinlan, for joining us today.
Thank you, Shawnte. Thank you for the introduction. So, what I'm going to talk about today is the research that went into the messages that you're going to learn about. And so, this really comes from the background that traditionally health education messages are basically determined by scientists what is best. So it's either through lab research or clinical research or epidemiology studies that the scientists determine what is best. And then the next slide, and then they tell people what to do for their health. So, out of those messages come, here's what you need to do. Don't smoke, eat 5 fruits and vegetables a day, cook raw beef to a certain temperature. But we all know that just telling people what to do does not necessarily cause behavior change. And so, in our research and in other research around behavior change for populations, consumers, we use health behavior models and theories. And what these do are they attempt to seek a little bit more information, not just to tell people what to do, but to attempt to explain why individuals and communities might do what they do. And they can help planners then design more effective health promotion campaigns. And that's what we hope we've done here. So a little history on washing poultry after the 2013 education campaign came out. Again, we did some research in our lab in 2011, and we found that in our study, about 90% of consumers that we surveyed were washing raw poultry. We then released the education campaigns in 2013. They received quite a bit of media attention, a little bit of controversy, a little bit of argument. Should I, I'm not going to do it, things like that. A lot of chat on social media and lots of YouTube hits on certain segments of it. In 2013, after that had come out, the FDA included the question about washing raw poultry in their food safety education or food safety survey. And they found that at that point, 70% of those that responded said they still washed raw poultry. So we think there was an initial, kind of hit or impact in terms of decreasing people washing raw poultry. But subsequent studies since the FDA survey in 2016 and then an individual research survey in 2019 showed that kind of remained steady. High 70s or high 60s, low 70s was as low as we got in terms of people not washing raw poultry. So that led us to the proposal and the work I'm going to talk about here, identifying behaviors to consumers adopting safe handling food practices. And this was a USDA funded research. So we used two different methods of formative research, surveys and in-depth interviews, to help to develop inform what should the next iteration of the Don't Wash Your Chicken message look like. We use, as I said, surveys and in-depth interviews. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is that survey research. So the objectives here were to first determine the current frequency with which consumers wash raw poultry. We have an idea what we're going to find, about 70% is what we predicted. But then we wanted to also determine if consumers are even aware of the recommendation to wash raw poultry, and then try to identify some common barriers that consumers said prevented them from not washing the raw poultry. The survey was administered in September of 2020. We used the SurveyMonkey contribute member pool. It was administered to adults in the US, and we purchased a panel of 2,000 respondents who would be representative of the US population. We got 2,193 responses. We lost about 317 of these to what we call the screener question, that is, do you prepare raw poultry? And if they didn't prepare raw poultry, we didn't want them to go further in the study. We lost 54 to a lack of engagement. That's where you just ask a question, such as what color is the sky? And you only provide one answer that could be correct. And if people aren't answering this correct, then you kind of know that they're not reading the questions as thoroughly as they should be. And so this is just a good practice for those of you that might do surveys, including an engagement question. So you know who to eliminate potentially. And 54 out of over 2,000 is a pretty good rate of people engaged. Very few did we lose to that. So we ended up with a little over 1,800 eligible responses for data analysis. So not surprisingly, we found that in our studies, about 73% said they still wash raw poultry, and only about 27% said they didn't wash raw poultry. And then this is the awareness of the message that we wanted to find out. So we took that group that said they washed raw poultry, and we asked them that, were they aware of the message? And we found that almost 70% of them were unaware of the message. So this was really important information for us, because we realize now that a lot of people just haven't heard the message. Next slide. So the next thing we did was that we actually just showed them a screenshot of the USDA site where they talk about washing meat and poultry and how it's not recommended. And after we showed the survey participants this, 82% of them said that they were somewhat to very confident that they could change their behavior after reading the message. So this was really encouraging in terms of we just need to get the message out there more. Of those, so that now we're looking at the group of consumers who had heard the message but still washed raw poultry. And what's interesting here is that if you look at the often and always, so there's about 60% of the group that say they either often or always wash it. But then there's another 35% or so who say, I only sometimes or rarely. And so maybe this is the types of questions we need to be asking going forward. Maybe we can't get everybody to always stop washing their chicken, but maybe we can sometimes get them to go to, I rarely wash my poultry. And again, of this group who reported that they continue to wash raw poultry, over half of them, just about 60%, washed it with something. They had solutions. They had salt, lemon juice, vinegar, lime juice, alcohol. So, this is a little bit different, and we need to think going forward. This group is really doing something more than just rinsing their poultry. They're really, a large number of them are really, processing it in some way. So this was interesting. And so this is where your poll came from. When in our survey of that group that said they knew the message but still wouldn't, adopt the behavior, the main reason, 58%, was that they said, I clean my sink and counter surfaces well. So people seem to think that they're cleaning well, but those of us in food safety education know that often people think they're cleaning better than they are. So in conclusion, with respect to this survey aspect of the research, we found that washing raw poultry continues to be prevalent in the US, not a surprise. What was a surprise was the large percentage of consumers are still not aware of the message not to wash raw poultry, and that many of these consumers may easily change their behavior if they're made aware of the correct behavior. And then finally, that some consumers are resistant to the correct behavior. Again, not surprising to us, but that leads to the next topic that I want to talk to you about, which is the formative research, the in-depth interviews, using just those individuals who were resistant to using the message. So for this research, it's a little bit different. The research I just presented to you is survey research. Many of you are probably familiar with survey research and percentages and things like that. But this formative research is behavioral science-based research, and this is more qualitative research. So rather than talk about numbers, this is more exploratory in nature, and it revolves around discussions and vocabulary and themes that might be identified, what people are saying. So it more seeks to really understand what people are thinking, and not to put the answers in front of them, the potential answers in front of them. So I'll just educate you a little bit. If nothing else, maybe you'll learn something about behavior change theories here. So this is an example of the of a behavior change model. We use the trans-theoretical model of behavior change. And what this involves, and again, this can be applied to many things. So I'm going to talk about it in a few different contexts. Down at the bottom, you'll see is what's called pre-contemplation. This is based on the idea that there are 5 levels of basically movement in terms of getting someone to go from not performing the recommended behavior to performing it consistently. And so, down at the bottom, again, this is pre-contemplation. They're not ready to make the behavior change. And that may be because they're not aware of the necessary behavior change. So with washing raw poultry, we find that a lot of people, that's where they are. They just aren't aware of the message yet. And then contemplation is when they're thinking about it. So I'm going to put it now in the context of, for instance, eating 5 fruits and vegetables a day. So you may not know that you should eat 5 fruits and vegetables a day, but then you find out that you should, and you're thinking about it. All right, that maybe I should do that. And that moves you into contemplation. And then when you get to preparation, that means that you're preparing to make a change. So now you might be buying the fruits and vegetables that you like so that you have them at your house and you're able to make the change. And then you move into action. So you start taking action and you are working hard. You're counting your fruits and vegetables and you're eating them. And then we know with any behavior change, there's always going to be relapsing and sliding backwards. So some days you do, some days you don't eat as many fruits and vegetables as you should, up until where you are, and this can take years even to make these changes, consistent to where you're maintaining a good, the lifestyle that's recommended. So again, we use this model. What was surprising is that we found, especially with our first campaign, a lot of people were not yet ready because they didn't know the message. And then they moved right to maintenance. They said, okay, thanks, I didn't know. And they moved right to maintenance. But we know another group that others need more information to start thinking about it and preparing for action. So for our in-depth interviews, we recruited individuals specifically, again, who were aware of the message, but reported not adopting the correct behavior. And we conducted the in-depth interviews to better understand these particular consumers' resistance to adopting the correct behavior. And the goal was to identify barriers to consumers adopting that correct behavior that could inform the next generation of education materials that you'll see today. Each question was categorized into one of 4 themes. So when you're doing these in-depth interviews, you have they're called structured interviews too. And that's where, because you're not just starting to talk to them, you have a series of questions, but the questions are more just to start a conversation. So they were based around what are their current raw poultry handling behaviors, what's their awareness or knowledge of the correct behavior, what are their barriers, and what are their facilitators to behavior change? So what would make them change? And sometimes they said absolutely nothing, but sometimes there were things that would make them change. So facilitators that we could be using to help people make those changes. Participants for this were recruited via a number of different ways. The recruitment occurred from October 2020 through March 2021. And eligibility was, again, that they were aware of the message, but they still washed or rinsed raw chicken, and that they were an adult over 18. And this is just an example of one of the social media messages that was put out to recruit people. And I will mention they did receive a $50 Amazon card for participation. So just briefly, some of, how did we do this? Participants were emailed consent information. They did consent to take part in the research, and they did a Zoom in-depth interview. The researcher followed a flexible 13 questioning route, consistent with all participants. That's what's important. And then the interviews were completed with a total of 23 people. And that's a very small number, because that's to do this type of research, you can only do it on a small number of people versus survey research you can do on hundreds and thousands. But those 23 people The interviews were conducted between December 2020 and March 2021, and interviews lasted somewhere between 30 and 60 minutes. Just a shot. This is what on my right side is the postdoctoral researcher who conducted the research, and a participant who we've blocked out here. This is, they sat and chatted about chicken for again, 30 to 60 minutes, dependent upon how long the participant was engaged. So briefly, I'm not going to read all of these quotes. I'll briefly mention the themes that we came out of these. So a couple themes: washing and cooking influence. People's behavior around how they prepared raw chicken was greatly influenced by who taught them how to prepare and wash or not wash the cooking, the chicken, but also how else they prepared poultry, what other steps they were taking. And again, that influence was often from family, parents, grandparents, friends. And then the next theme would be control. Sorry, I hesitated. The next theme we got was control. Yeah. And that is that participants really felt like they needed to do something with their chicken. Doing something make them feel like they had final control. And then lack of trust. So they didn't trust either the processors or the government, or in some cases that, if it was being processed right there in the store, they didn't trust, the butcher in the back who was touching their chicken. So that lack of trust. And again, that winds back to control. They needed, because they didn't trust that it was, as prepared as it could be when they got it, they needed the control to do something. And then habits, the idea that, habits, I've done it all my life. I just do it. I'm just used to doing it. And it's very hard to break a habit, as we know. And then some questions and comments that came out of these that consumers had. So why should I change it if this is the way my grandmother or my mother did it? Like, why are you telling me to change now? What's the goo that I need to get off? So that's I think of what many of you thought they said, well, certainly this group did say that what's the goo I need to get it off. They were very interested in how to keep their family safe, even more so than themselves. They wanted to make sure that they were taking care of their children, their parents, their grandparents. So they were very interested and motivated to change based on how to keep their family safe. And then again, that lack of trust. I need control to make sure it's safe. So I think later on, you'll be seeing these addressed in the messages, hopefully, and you see where they're addressed. So again, results of this section are that most participants were willing to learn more about the safe handling of raw chicken, and that the longstanding habit of washing chicken and having a sense of control over the preparation was the primary reason that they continued to wash raw chicken. Results informed us that future message development should highlight the scientific evidence supporting the recommendation, elaborate the reasoning behind the message. So participants, they want to know more. They want to be informed. They don't just want to be told what to do. They want to know more. And then to provide alternative behaviors. So again, to address that control issue, what can we tell them to do that they feel like they have that final level of control? And then the message development, what you're going to see today, this went through what's called the iterative process. So that is where you refer back to stakeholders and get input into the development of a message and education materials multiple times along the way. In the beginning, once it's drafted, again, when it's almost finalized. So we did that. We had input from stakeholders multiple times in the process of development. And those stakeholders included backfighters, academics, health educators, and USDA and CDC officials. So a lot of input went into the messaging that you're going to learn about today. And again, that's what led, I've repeated myself here. So that's what led to the materials that you're going to see today. And with that, I would just like to thank the pictures there are the students. Christopher Trall got his master's degree on this. And Abby Gilman was a postdoctoral researcher for a year doing this research, but also acknowledge our partners on this grant. That is the Partnership for Food Safety Education, as well as New Mexico State University, who you'll hear from next. And again, acknowledge that this was a USDA funded project. And certainly, I think there's going to be some Q&A afterwards, but if any of you would like to reach out to me, my email address is there. You're welcome to reach out to me.
Thank you for sharing your research with us, Dr. Quinlan. I'm sure the educators will have some questions for you at the end. So our next speaker is Adrian Aguirre. As studio manager, Adrian art directs and oversees the production of all games, interactive, and animations created by New Mexico State University's multimedia team. Originally from Juarez, Mexico, Adrian is a New Mexico State alumnus and holds a Master of Fine Arts from the University of North Texas. Having a background in art, design, and front-end development, Adrian's comprehensive understanding of digital media production helps the studio continuously explore new techniques for illustration, animation, web, mobile, and accessibility. Thank you for joining us, Adrian.
Thank you for inviting me and for having us present today. So yeah, I'm Adrian, and I work at the Learning Games Lab, and there's a link here in the first slide. Okay, so I'm gonna talk to you today about our process for making animations and games, specifically with this project. And with this project, our goal was pretty straightforward. That was to change consumer behavior, that of washing and rinsing poultry by communicating key issues, targeting the reasons for why people continue to wash and rinse poultry. And we don't ever start just by drawing or animating. We usually have a lot of discussions beforehand. And so our design approach is to first identify our audience, who it is and who it isn't, and strategies for that message. And for this process, Dr. Quinlan and Dr. Gilman guided us with their research finding, and you saw a little bit of that earlier. And we learned about the type of barriers that keep people from changing their behavior on washing poultry. Okay, and so from their research, we narrowed down our audience to the people open to learning more about health risks and open to changing behavior, which typically would be a younger audience, which then could share with older generations. So the desired changes that we wanted for our audience was first to understand that rinsing doesn't remove pathogens, it spreads them. Understand that the amount of contamination from splatter and aerosolization is invisible and hard to sanitize. Understand that the slime goo is not harmful and that instead of rinsing it, you can dry it with a paper towel. And know that cooking to 165 degrees Fahrenheit is what kills the pathogens. Understand that high-risk populations are more susceptible to serious foodborne illnesses. And understand that processed chicken is now pre-rinsed and that the habits for washing chicken were formed at a different time. So then we knew that in our animations, we needed to visualize contamination from splatter and aerosolization, and reinforce the message that cooking to 165 degrees Fahrenheit is what's most important. We needed to remind viewers of the risk of contamination and of getting their high-risk family members sick. Show that there's an alternative, and that it's manageable and doable, and explain why washing was done in the past, but it's no longer needed. So then we organized these ideas into 3 key messages for why you shouldn't wash your chicken. So we said, don't wash your chicken, it's risky, it's unnecessary, and there's a better way. We wanted to create content for a social media campaign that could reach a younger audience with easily shareable short videos, and a social media toolkit to guide others on how to use them. We wanted to use messages that were catchy and could grab the audience's attention. And then we wanted a base, like a landing page that would tie the videos and other content to the social media campaign. Okay, so let me talk briefly about the social media toolkit. This is a guide for creating social media posts that my colleague Jeffrey Burras created. And it includes several sample images, some messages, and a list of social media channels and hashtags that you can use. Okay, so once we knew what we wanted to make, our production steps went like this. We started with a script, and this is where we made sure that the content was concise, easy to understand, and hopefully entertaining. Then we storyboarded the sketches, and we made, just to make sure we had the right visuals. One of the things that we looked at a lot was how we would visualize the aerosolization in the videos. Then we have an animatic, and then an animatic is just a very rough animation, and this is to test our timing and animation. Then we had a first draft animation, and this look more closely to what you see, what I'm going to show you next, but it didn't have final audio. So then we presented this to the Fight Back ambassadors, and we had questions. Then we got their feedback, and that helped us finish the animations. Okay, so when we tested the videos, we wanted to know whether the videos were clear and easy to understand, and that they accurately portrayed good practices, and also to flag any concerns. We wanted to know whether they provided a good understanding of the why behind the guidance, and also just general impressions or anything that would be unexpected or unintended. All right, so now I'm gonna show you the videos. The first one is risk, and just like the title suggests, this is about the health risk caused by rinsing poultry. So even if you think you're gonna be cleaning your kitchen afterward, there's a lot of stuff that you don't see that you might not be cleaning.
Kitchens do a lot of work for our families. Meals are prepared, drinks are poured and spilled, and there's always plenty to clean and wash. However, rinsing raw poultry contaminates your kitchen with harmful bacteria like Salmonella. Bacteria is aerosolized with water when you rinse your chicken, which means that bacteria can travel beyond what you can see. When you can keep bacteria from spreading, you make the kitchen as clean as possible. This is especially important for the high-risk members of our family, loved ones who are younger and older, or those with poor immune systems. If they get a foodborne illness, they're more likely to be hospitalized or become very ill. Don't rinse your chicken. Don't cross-contaminate. Keep raw juice and chicken away from other foods and kitchen items, and cook thoroughly to at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, so that was risk, and then the next one is processing was a little different. And this one we talk about that, you know, the way the chicken when chickens were processed a long time ago, before many of the regulations came by, your grandparents or your parents learned a habit of washing their chicken, but it's no longer necessary.
Back in the day, we used to have have to wash our chicken because processing chickens happened a little closer to home. Things have changed a lot since then. Nowadays, chickens are brought from the farm where they're raised to a processing plant. Here, they are prepped, then washed and rinsed several times. To prevent diseases, the USDA inspects the chicken at several steps throughout the process. The chickens are then chilled, packaged, and sent off to the grocery store. So when the chicken finally arrives in your home, you don't need to wash it. Cook the chicken to at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit and enjoy a delicious meal.
And then our third video is, I think it's our favorite, and it's a fun one. And this is where we talk about the goo that's on the chicken and what to do about it.
Ew, what's that wet goo?
Oh yeah, that's fine. It's pretty much just protein and water. It'll cook away. But if it bothers you, just wipe it off with a paper towel and then wash your hands. The seasoning will stick better anyway.
Ew, what's that green stuff?
Those are vegetables, Steve.
All right, and then last but not least, we created a very short animation that shows that no matter how you cook your chicken, whether it's fried, it's baked, you want to make sure that you check its temperature to know that it's safe to eat.
Raw chicken may have harmful bacteria, sometimes on the inside, sometimes on the outside. But wherever harmful bacteria are found, they'll die when internal temperatures of the chicken reach 165 degrees Fahrenheit. So don't rinse your chicken, which will spread bacteria. And since you can't tell if it's done just by looking at it, use a thermometer and cook your chicken to 165 degrees Fahrenheit.
All right, so that's all I wanted to show you. And then if we go to my last slide, you can reach me at the Learning Games Lab, learninggameslab.org. Thank you.
We appreciate all this great information about the Don't Wash Your Chicken campaign. Adrian will also stick around for some questions. And don't worry, everyone, you will receive a copy of this PowerPoint presentation. So before we move on, let's take another quick poll. Which resources are most helpful in your food safety education outreach? So tell us what resources you love, what type of resources you love. Okay, we will give you about 5 more seconds. Okay, so according to the poll, most of you love videos, and then secondly, you love social media graphics, and that is perfect because that is what our webinar today is all about: shareable videos and social media graphics in your outreach. So next we will have Melissa Wyatt joining us to help me reveal more new shareable resources for you all. Melissa has a background in nutritional sciences and professional writing. She will soon begin teaching at her local community college. Melissa is a former cooperative extension agent who promoted food safety in food and nutrition classes. She most recently promoted food safety during her dietetic internship with Montana State University. Thank you for being here with us, Melissa.
Thank you, Shawnte, for inviting me.
So recently, the partnership conducted a survey to find out which food safety resources our educators are most familiar with and what your needs are. Surprisingly, the food safety Mythbusters topped that list. You all have loved the Mythbusters campaign, which actually hasn't been updated in 6 years. So for the partnership's 25th anniversary this year, we are pleased to announce an updated Mythbusters campaign with 25 new social media graphics. And Melissa and I will briefly preview the graphics and messages for you. So first, we will have meat and poultry. So we created 2 graphics focusing on safe poultry handling that includes messages from Drexel's research and New Mexico State's campaign. Consumers need to know that rinsing raw chicken can spread harmful bacteria around the sink, the countertops, and onto ready-to-eat foods. And the slime or goo on the outside of raw chicken is a mixture of water and protein used to retain moisture and tenderness, and it will go away during the cooking process. So the safe way to get rid of harmful bacteria is to cook the chicken until it reaches an internal temperature of 165 degrees on a food thermometer.
So next we have the fridge and freezer. This area is something that has been part of the Mythbusters in the past, and we're continuing to incorporate and update these graphics. Some of the big things are that freezing kills food. I've noted this when teaching the food safety aspect of some of the programs I did in extension, and people don't always understand what exactly the freezing process does in terms of food preservation. And it does not kill harmful bacteria on food. It slows down a lot of the reactions that the bacteria have. It slows down their growth, but it does not kill them. So making sure that things are cooked to a safe internal temperature. Now, a kind of related note is the making sure we're thawing things correctly. This is still something that people need to be aware of, and we have some great new graphics for this as well.
All right, now on to cleaning and sanitizing. Many people don't know that if there's a recalled food item in their fridge, they should not only throw out that item, but also clean and sanitize their entire fridge. Also, many people don't know that their produce bins can contain salmonella, listeria, as well as yeast and mold. And these bins should be cleaned and sanitized monthly to help prevent illness.
Next is baby and toddlers. We already heard about from the videos and other discussion points made from our folks out of Drexel University and New Mexico State. But babies and toddlers, we really haven't talked specifically about, but this is another area where this is a high risk population, and we do need to be making sure that we're handling food safely and following safe procedures. First one is just a basic hand washing message. It's something that we don't always think about maybe as parents because we're in a hurry changing diapers, things like that. But it really is important, not only for us as adults to wash hands, but also to have the kiddos get their hands washed as well. Because once again, they like to touch everything, put things in their mouths, all of those things. So it's really important after changing diapers to have both adults and children wash their hands. As well as another thing that's come up more recently is using frozen vegetables as kind of a way to soothe a teething child. And that can be challenging too, because once again, based on what I mentioned about the freezer earlier, it does not kill the bacteria. So as the baby's chewing on it and it's thawing out, that bacteria can grow as the food gets into that temperature danger zone. And so we have a couple new graphics on this as well.
So for microwave food safety, we really want home cooks to teach their young children how to cook their food safely in the microwave by following all package directions and also using a food thermometer. And we want them to know that the standing time recommended for microwavable foods is not optional, and it ensures the safety of the food.
And then food delivery is a new topic that's come into the Mythbusters campaign recently. Food delivery has skyrocketed in terms of the number of people using it since the pandemic. That has become a very popular thing, and it is around to stay here. So we want to make sure people are aware of the food safety aspects of food delivery, such as being home when the food is delivered to put it away, handling and cleaning surfaces before you start unpacking your meal kits or whatever food has been delivered to your home is another important one. I really truly identify with the second graphic here about perishable foods and being home when they're delivered. I'm in Arizona, and let me tell you, it's really hot. It's over 100 degrees outside. So if you had this stuff sitting on your porch, it's easily going to go bad if you don't have somebody there to take it and put it in the fridge right away when it gets there. So it is important to have these messages. And I believe the partnership's also working on developing more food delivery messages, as this was a top topic also in that needs assessment that the partnership has conducted. And so this is a new topic, and it's very popular right now to be discussing.
So with fruits and vegetables, many people don't realize that fruits and vegetables with skin or rind need to be rinsed or scrubbed with a brush, even if they're going to peel it or even if they're not going to eat the skin or the rind. Also, we want families to know that bagged greens and packaged salads have already been washed, so they don't need to wash them again. And if you're wondering about Spanish language, yes, we do have these materials available in Spanish. So for educators who serve a Spanish-speaking community, we have you covered. And we are so happy to let you all know that all 25 of these social media graphics are available to download now at fightback.org/mythbusters. As I mentioned, they are all available in both English and Spanish, and we have more resources coming soon. So we did want to thank these backfighters for helping us. They reviewed, well, all of our Fight Back ambassadors reviewed them for us, so thank you. But these particular folks provided input and just helped us out in developing all the Mythbuster messages. So we really thank you so much. So now we can get to the question and answer portion of the webinar. And please, my teammate Katie, please be on deck just in case my internet goes out again. But thank you all for your patience. So let's see what type of questions we have for Dr. Quinlan and
Well,
Adrian.
I've looked in the chat. I'll address just one or two if you want to look at the others, just some simple ones. Somebody asked what kind of alcohol was used in the rinsing, and what we found was it could be anything like gin, tequila. It just very strong alcohols, but not completely rinsing in alcohols. The idea that they put alcohol in, a small portion of alcohol in to the wash. So again, it might be a flavor thing that they are trying for, but they're not. I mean, they're not reporting rinsing it in tubs of beer or wine or something. It was strong alcohol put in. So that was just, and that was a very small number of people, I have to point out. Somebody brought up a really important topic that I don't think we discuss enough, and it's just so hard to get everything in. If you temp your chicken and it's only 150, should you wash the thermometer before you temp it again? And you absolutely should. So if you put it in at 150, there's a good chance, that we know that you're not ready to eat it. And that's because the salmonella or campylobacter may still be alive. So you should wash it in warm water. You should wash it in warm soapy water to get that, and then dry it appropriately with the paper towel. And then before you put it into the chicken again, when you think it's closer to temperature.
Okay, yes, thank you, Dr. Quinlan. So one question asked, might people be washing their poultry because they are actually defrosting it under running water?
And they might be. And so is that washing or is that defrosting? So we do say, so this is where, again, we'd recommend, what we do recommend when people defrost underwater is they keep it in the original packaging. So not to defrost it, it should be defrosted. It should be defrosted with running water going over the packaged product, not taking it all out of the packaging and then just putting the raw poultry into the sink or something. So they that could be, a way that they're defrosting. But then again, when we say that they're going to defrost that way, then they know that they need to clean and sanitize the sink after they've done that. So.
Okay.
Preferred way is microwave or refrigerator, just for the record. Defrosting underwater is a last resort, but the last safe resort. Yeah.
Yes, and that's a great point, and one of our Mythbusters does address that. So we have another good question for you, Dr. Quinlan. But before that, Adrian, someone wants to know, wants to tell you that the animations are great, and they want to know what program you use to create the animations.
We animate using Adobe products, so we use Photoshop for the art creation, and then After Effects to animate them.
Okay, great. And while we still have you, Adrian, are the videos available in any other languages?
No, at this point, they're just in English.
Okay. Okay, so here's another question, Dr. Quinlan. Why are we telling folks that they can use a paper towel to wipe off the chicken? Because there may be a potential contamination to hands and countertop from the paper towel.
So you are right. And if you look at the materials, if you look at that goo one, it shows wiping the material, the paper towel, wiping the chicken with the paper towel. It shows the paper towel going into the trash can, and it says wash your hands. So you are right. It's not a no risk thing. There is some risk associated with that, but it's still less risk than washing the whole chicken, and it allows people that control. So this is where we're trying to provide an alternative, an option that gives them some control and action that they can take, but it is not without risk. And so anybody using these materials for education, you want to stress that part. If they really feel like they need to wipe that goo off, they need to throw that paper towel away immediately, and they need to wash their hands.
Okay. So another question, are there recommendations for products to use or to stay away from when disinfecting surfaces after prep? For example, products like Ms. Meyer's are effective at killing germs on surfaces?
So we generally, I've not seen in food safety a recommendation of any particular product to use, right? So, but what I would say is you don't just want a cleaner, you want something that says disinfect or sanitize. And you can look at it. They will often say there's efficacy reading, there's efficacy labels on those that they disinfect 99.9 or whatever. So you don't just want a cleaner, you do want a disinfectant or sanitizer.
Okay. One question is asking, should chicken be cooked on separate sheet pans than vegetables?
Not if you cook it all to 165 degrees, as long as everything, it's not uncommon for recipes to say, put it all on one pan. So yeah, if you cook it all to 165 degrees, then that's fine.
Okay. So one question is,
yeah, there's a lot of wonderful questions in here. It's hard to
yes. we're gonna try to answer just a few more, and everyone too that's asking questions, if we don't get to your question today, we're gonna try to email you an answer.
Can I make a pitch? If anybody out there could help us to translate the materials, maybe they could reach out. So the materials, it would be wonderful to translate them. We did not develop them in that way, but if anybody could potentially help with the translation that into any particular language, we could just gather that information for down the road if we have the ability to translate them.
Okay, I'm just trying to look through these questions.
Shawnte, I was going to answer one about somebody mentioned they're working in for Cornell Cooperative Extension and the FNEP program. One thing I would do is I would check with whoever coordinates the FNEP program or anybody, but I just putting in tips. You don't have to be certified. I know the question is certification in food safety. You don't have to be certified to add things like wash your hands before you start cooking your meal. Those things are just things that we can incorporate in as we're going along, especially temping the food. That's another thing you can incorporate in if you're doing food demonstrations. Now, if you haven't ever really done a whole lot of that and you're not sure about something, you can certainly reach out to somebody within your cooperative extension network that has that experience that can possibly teach you and bring you up to date on techniques and things to temp the food correctly. And then all the resources on the Fight Back website are free to use as an extension educator. I have used numerous materials from fightback.org, and while my background is in nutrition, and we get a lot of food safety training in that, I would say you are welcome to use those. And if you ever have questions, reach out to colleagues that you trust that have more knowledge than you or more experience, and ask for their advice and their input on how you can maybe incorporate it into what you're doing.
All right, thank you, Melissa. So let's just answer this one last question. Is there a better shelf to store chicken in the fridge, bottom versus middle versus top?
So you really want, you want to make an assumption that there's a potential for some kind of leakage or something. So first, most important is put it into a container that it cannot leak from. That's really, leaving it in the bag. I know in my experience, just leaving it in the plastic bag or in the wrap, I've still had instances where I can pick it up and it's moist on the bottom after a day of being in there. Having said that, then the recommendation is to keep it on the bottom shelf so that there is a minimum, so it's not on the top and potentially leaking down onto many other things. So the closer to the bottom of the refrigerator you can get, the better. Okay. But I would recommend beyond that, like I said, putting it on a plate or something that would contain any dripping.
Okay, great, thank you. So we're going to stop with the questions now. Like I said, we're going to try to email some of you who didn't get your questions actually answered during this webinar, but we have just a few wrap-up slides. So we would love for you all to stay connected with us. These are our main social media handles, so please follow us. Also, the next Consumer Food Safety Education Conference is this coming March. We encourage you all to register before September 1st to get a discounted rate, and you can learn more about the event online. So coming up, National Food Safety Education Month in September, and during that month, the partnership, will be rolling out all of these wonderful new graphics and messages on our social media networks. So please, we would love for you to share and retweet. Global Hand Washing Day is October 15th, and the Story of Your Dinner campaign will roll out for November and December. And please, we invite you to help us to be a top-rated nonprofit. It will take you less than 3 minutes to write a brief review of us at greatnonprofits.org. And if you are interested in culinary topics or educational resources for elementary or middle schools, we invite you to sign up for these e-newsletters. And we would like to, of course, thank our contributing partners. Without their contributions and their support, we wouldn't be able to bring you webinars and all of these fantastic resources. And a final reminder for your CEUs, you can download them from the chat box now. You'll receive them in a follow-up email, and then tomorrow you can download them from our website. And thank you so much for our guest speakers, and thank you all for joining us today. Stay safe.